This video is going to be a bit different compared to my other videos. This video will be specifically on the topic of rigging. There are three broad sections in this video. The first is on the thread itself. The second is about the re-rigging of the Yamato. There was some thread that I wanted to cut off and replace with EZ-Line and also correct something that was a bit wrong. And the third section is how I did the rigging on the Nagato, specifically the section that connects from the pagoda tower to the mast and the funnel. When I started building ships, I was not aware of EZ-Line, and I had to choose some kind of thread to do the rigging. So then I looked around a bit more and I came across this embroidery thread, which is nice. It's very thin. It doesn't have any kind of fraying edges on it, and it kind of looks like a little miniature cable. So I thought that would be something nice to work with. So this is where I started, with just normal embroidery thread. The problems with embroidery thread aren't initially apparent, but as soon as you cut it off, you see this. The line, when it's not under tension, kind of just curls up and bends into all sorts of weird ways. It's not nice and straight like this when you pull it under tension. And that presents a bit of a problem, because if you want it to be straight, then you have to put it under tension. But if you put it under tension, you start pulling the mast. And if you put enough pieces of embroidery thread in tension against the mast, the chances are you'll pull one of them a little bit too far and cause one of the other lines to become a little bit slack, and then you get these kind of weird shapes in it again. And that's obviously not ideal. So the solution to this is to cut off your embroidery thread and take a clothes iron and thread by thread iron it, so that when you don't have it under tension, it stays perfectly straight. So the downsides of working with embroidery thread, which by appearances looks perfectly fine, led me to look for a better solution, and that's where I came across EZ-Line. Now EZ-Line is kind of like a little piece of thin plastic that has a huge amount of stretch in it. And what's nice about that is because it stretches so much, and because it requires only a very little bit of tension on it to pull it perfectly straight, it means you can put a whole lot of these lines on for the rigging and not have to worry about bending or pulling other parts out of place. And that's all thanks to its extreme stretchiness. For example, if I just take a little bit like this and then pull, let's see how far it can go. I'm pressing quite hard, but it's very, very stretchy. I think it's about 6 times its length. And as you can see, when you stop stretching, it jumps right back. So that's the good thing about EZ-Line. You can bump it, it's just going to stretch, it's not going to pull any pieces and deform anything, and it's just easy to work with because obviously you don't have to iron it, because you can put a little bit of tension on it without having to worry about moving things around. So what you see here is embroidery thread, but also the rigging is incorrect. There should be 3 lines that run from the main mast all the way to the stern of the ship. So what I need to do is cut off these pieces and then replace it with EZ-Line to make things a little bit easier to work with. So as you can see with embroidery thread, when you tap it, even just a little bit, it bends the mast, because there's absolutely no stretching capability in the embroidery thread. So here we go. I start by cutting in roughly the middle of these pieces, just so that there's no tension on either ends. You have to squeeze quite hard to get it to snap off. But I'll just start by cutting off these pieces. Now, as you can see, the flag is actually glued a bit to the thread over there. So I'm just going to have to be careful here and see how I can detach the rigging from the flag. I won't be able to detach it by scraping it off or anything. So I'm going to have to just cut the line very precisely on the edge of the flag. But that's not going to be too difficult, I don't think. I just need to get a good angle. So I first should cut this so I can bend it up a bit, and then come underneath it and get a clean line on the edge. And then you get one of those things that'll be very difficult to notice that was ever there. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And as for these little bits that are still glued down, now I can handle them easily, so I can go and pull it up directly off the mast, and that snaps the glue and it comes off quite easily. This one seems to be a little bit more resistant. There you go, got it off. This one even more so. really doesn't want to come off. I just grab it with my fingers and just give it a good pull. Kind of like to use the tweezers because you can't overdo it. It's going to slip. But yeah, there we go. Came off anyway. Okay, let's just get that out the way. Pull this off over here. Now this little structure on top of this secondary turret is just far too delicate to pull it off, so I'm just going to have to cut it off. Now, oh, well, there we go. Freeze. So what happened there is quite a good lesson. If you break something, stop. Don't move, freeze. See what's broken and see how you can maneuver to remove your hand from or the tool from whatever it is that's just snapped without doing further damage. This looks like a pretty clean break, so it shouldn't be too difficult to fix. Just a bit of super glue to reposition it back on top of the crane's mount. But yeah, I mean, I should have thought about this. Such a large piece of photo etch makes quite a good lever. So now we're going to put the rigging back on. Yeah, same extra thick super glue, put on the mast. It's not sticking so well initially, so I'm going to use accelerator. I haven't worked with accelerator for a while. I'm really spraying it all over the place. That's not ideal. And if you noticed, but it went a bit wide, and I got some on the middle of that mast structure. So now I put the super glue on the actual line, and as soon as it touches this part with the accelerator already on it, it's going to dry very quickly. If I had put it on the mast first, it would have dried before I got the line to touch it. And then now again for the last piece, this was out of the spray zone, so I can just put it back on the mast and then touch the line to it and hopefully do a better job this time. I do have the paint on version, which I had run out of, but I went and got more of it now. It just makes being precise a little bit more easier. Tamiya makes a version of it that's quite good. Anyways, now to the stern of the ship. Same process again. Take a bit of glue, put on top of the mast. Pull it now under the slightest tension. Only the least tension that is required. You don't want to overdo it yet. So absolutely minimal tension on the line just to make it look straight. Touch it to the top of the mast. Let it sit for a few seconds. Pressure helps the glue dry, so push down on it. And there we go. It's stuck. There still should be enough glue on the top there for the other line, so I won't reapply it. I'll just go 1, 2, 3, placing the rigging on top of the mast while it's nicely under tension. I'm stroking the easy line like that to try and get any curls and twists out of it. The easy line is more like a thin, very thin tape, so if it's too twisty it does look a bit weird. And then yeah, just touch the top of the mast and it sticks nicely. For the third time, stroke it, and then press it down onto the top of the mast. Now that all three are there, I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on top of it to seal it in. There's not so much glue holding down all that, so I'll just make it a little bit more solid, and then I want this to just instantly set, so I'll give it a little bit of a spray with accelerator. There we go, getting better at this. Now I only want one of these lines to go to the very end, so I'm going to cut off 2 of them. Doesn't really matter which 2, just so long as it looks right. The only trick here is to make sure that when you do cut one, you don't accidentally cut the other one. So I'm just trying to see what's going on here to get it untangled. I think one might be on top of the other one. This one is the bottom, is the top one, so I can just cut that off nicely. This knife seems to be a bit blunt. Okay, now this needs to just be attached to the flagpole. So what I need to do is to determine the correct length. So that is the length where it is just under the slightest bit of tension. So I just grab it at a random point and I touch it to where I want to glue it. As you can see, it's too slack, so I did it again. And now it's tight, so now I know that's exactly the place where I want to cut it. So I just squeeze hard here and then get my cutters, and there we go. That should be the correct length. Just grab that, test it, and it looks about right. I'm happy with that. Doesn't need to be perfect, it's because remember you've got a lot of stretch on these lines. Now I'll just apply some glue to the site. And just get the accelerator ready. Grab the line. Touch it where I want it and spray. Yeah, that should be stuck. There we go. So that's the easy bit done. Now I need to attach these lines that go from the top of the structure on this secondary turret and run up to these lines that run from the main mast all the way to the stern of the ship. So here I just put a little bit of glue on the end of the line and attach it to the mast, try and hold it steady for a bit and let it stick. Same thing for this side. It seems to want to be a little bit less cooperative, so it's just going to have to require some. Oh, okay, it's come off now. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove it, cut off that bit of glue on the end there, because the glue does kind of warp the shape of EZ-Line and makes it rigid, and then reapply it and try this again. Hope that with a bit of luck it sticks. Yeah, there we go. That's a bit better. Let's just spray this so it's properly set. Don't want to have to try and put these on again. That structure on the turret does just need to be straightened up a bit, but that's not too difficult. It's very easy to move it. So the problem here is that, as you can see, when I glued it, it didn't quite go up nice and vertically. It's off to the side. So I have to kind of grab it and manhandle it a bit so that it's straight. Now I forgot to start recording when I did this part. Well, that's a bit silly, but these mistakes were made. But I'll show you what I did in this second line from the turret. So first I pick it up and hang it over some of the rigging that's already there. That's just to get it out of the way and to make sure that I can move quickly once glue's on the model. And as you can see, when you're trying to maneuver around all sorts of bits and pieces, you know, sometimes make things difficult for yourself. I had measured out the kind of distance that I wanted. In this case, it's 30 millimeters. So now once again, I'm just measuring down 30 millimeters. It's just the angle that you're looking at the model and makes it look like it's not 30 millimeters away, but it is. Apply the glue to the line, which is already stretched, so that it doesn't warp and do all sorts of weird things. And then I pull this piece that I'm connecting under a little bit of tension and touch it to the location the glue is, and EZ-Line on EZ-Line with super glue bonds pretty much instantly. And there it is, it's stuck. Now there's just this last bit of line to do, the one in the middle, which runs from this piece of superstructure up to the central line, the central rigging line. Once again, attaching it to the base to start. It's more difficult to get down there, so to not have all sorts of things in the way while you're maneuvering it into place makes things a bit easier. Just pressing down to make sure it's stuck properly. This is still this extra thick super glue, so it does dry more slowly. Then once again, I'm going to pick up the thread and get it to the location where I want it, while unhooking it from anything so I don't damage stuff accidentally while trying to glue this in place. going to go roughly over there. Just lay it down over this other bit of rigging. And I'm just estimating where I want it, touching a little bit of super glue to the line again. Now I can just safely pick up this piece of rigging, which is just nicely hanging where I want it. Pull it under a little bit of tension and touch it to the rigging, and it glues almost instantly. So now I need to cut off this excess. So once again I go back to my side cutters and I pull it up a little bit so that I make a little bit of like a roof away from the line, and then I push it down as far as I can go and cut it. All you need to do here is be careful not to actually cut a piece of rigging that you want to keep. Well, worst case scenario, you just have to start again, but yeah, rather be a bit more conservative and then come back with another round of cutting than to just accidentally cut the whole thing off. Now this one's hooked underneath, so I'm going to have to pull it out. Okay, there we go. Now this is better. So same thing again. Pull it up, get my clippers, come down and stuck. Come on, cut. There we go. Yeah, you see this one was a bit far off. I should have cut closer. I'll come back to that one and neaten it up a bit. It's not such a big deal. And then same story again for the third time. Hopefully I do a better job this time. Come down and tight. Come on, cut. Jeez, it doesn't want to give. There we go. Jeez, squeezing hard on that one. Need a sharper clipper, I guess. Okay, let's see if I can get this better. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, no, I don't want to go closer than that. Then the last thing to do is just get a bit of flat clear and to put it on the super glue. This is just because super glue is itself glossy. So this will just matte it down and make it look like the rest of the model. Just a small detail. And then with that, this rigging has been successfully changed. Now I think it looks quite a lot better. And I'm quite happy with this outcome. Only broke one piece while doing this, which is quite good. Now I can demonstrate the special property of EZ-Line. Look at this, look how much the EZ-Line can stretch and look how little the mast bends. Lots of stretch in it, so that makes things much safer. So now moving on to the Nagato. So here I'm showing you this part that was a bit more complicated. What you see here is the central piece of rigging where you have this trough that connects the pagoda tower to the mast and the funnel. And in this case, the line that runs from the pagoda tower to the mast is embroidery thread. So as you can see, if I press on it, it doesn't give at all. It bends the masts. So it kind of worked out possibly for the better in this model, because that means that where this EZ-Line, which is hanging from it, connects to it, it connects on a piece of line that is not going to stretch. So I don't have to worry about that connection point moving. Where I place it, it will stay. It might pull it down a little bit, but it's not going to move left or right because that line is in itself not going to stretch. So it just gives you a little consistency on both sides. But that wasn't planned, it just happened that way. If you look at the stern of the Nagato, you can see there's a whole lot of rigging over here. And this is actually a combination of EZ-Line and embroidery thread. So yeah, you're looking at rigging in pretty much the same context. This is embroidery thread. As you can see, when I tap it, it bends the mast. Here next to it is EZ-Line, and when I move this, it barely causes any deformation of the mast. I can hook on it and pull it up, and yeah, it's not going to do any damage. And then what you see here are connection points from EZ-Line with EZ-Line back down to the superstructure. So these are some of the upgrades to the rigging that I had done after I initially built it. So one of the things that's just important is to realize that just because you've built a ship doesn't mean you can't come back and improve upon it. You build it to your ability, and when you discover new tools, techniques, techniques or materials, it's very easy for you to come back and make improvements. So as for actually how I did this rigging in the center here, well, I built a jig out of toothpicks, and you can see that down here. So I started off by measuring these distances to make sure that it was the exact shape that I wanted. Then drew that onto a piece of paper. This is just a replicated, not the one that I actually used. And then I took some toothpicks, cut off the bottoms, and super glued them onto the points. So those represent the key points within the rigging. The left and rightmost toothpicks are the actual terminal points of the rigging, and then the two center ones are the bends. So once again, thick super glue and a toothpick and easy line is required for this. So I just cut off a length of easy line. That was roughly the length that I needed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it to the leftmost and rightmost toothpicks. So just a little bit of super glue. Take the line, hold it up against it, and it sticks pretty quickly. And then the same thing at the other end, and I'm just going to hold it in the middle with friction. I'm not going to actually glue it in the middle because you want to be able to, of course, remove this line from the jig because you'll be applying it to the model. So just a little bit of super glue at the end there. Pick up the line, make sure it's pretty much where you want it, near the top of the toothpick, and nice and tight and under tension, and not sagging in any of the sections. And then touch it to the area with super glue and let it stick. Okay, so now what you can see is I've got roughly the shape that I want, and it's not glued in the middle, so I can pick it up. And what I will need to do at the end is simply cut off this piece from the toothpicks, and then I'll have one piece that is the correct shape. So the next thing to do is to glue those three lines that then hang off from this piece of rigging in the center over here. Now, if you take the super glue and you try and directly apply it, you're going to have problems because you might actually accidentally glue this piece of rigging to the toothpick. So rather what you should do is just pick up a piece of easy line and then put the glue onto the end of the easy line and then touch it where you want it. It's such a small piece with no tension on it, it's not going to fall off. It will stick and then hang quite easily. So let's just see how this goes. About a 1 millimeter gap. And that should do it. Now it's just off to the side a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Straighten it up a bit. Yeah, that'll do. Same thing again on the right side. Apply the glue to the line. And then stick the line about 1 millimeter away from the toothpick on the inside. That one was easier. Sometimes it just cooperates, other times it fights you. And then for the third time, apply some glue to the end of the line. And now, roughly in the center, you can measure it out if you're being precise. To stick it in the center. Okay, there we go. Just want this to instantly set, so I'm going to spray some accelerator on it. And now it's ready to be cut off. It's all glued on nice and tight. I'm not going to come in from this side because it will obviously still be stuck to the mast, so go against your instinct and cut it off the model, so to say. So cut on the inside. I should have actually used just a hobby knife for that. It would have been easier. I didn't really need to use clippers and kind of got in the way of the toothpicks. But there you have it. There is one set, and now you have a jig and you know how to use the jig, so you can create as many copies of that as you like. I'm sure there are other ways you could do this. You could have just measured it out and done a straight line and connected it up, but it kind of just felt more practical for me to build the actual jig and have everything in the correct shape, hanging in the correct way, so that I just knew that would look right. So that was it. And then here you see the Nagato and Yamato back in their display cabinet together, looking all spruced up and nice with their new and improved rigging. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this. It's certainly a longer video than usual. If there are any other topic type videos that you'd like me to make, let me know and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for watching. Cheers.